Bosley.
Present.
Alderman Ordinance.
Present.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Tyus. Chairman Conway.
Present.
5 present, you have a quorum.
Good morning, members of the committee. We'll first recognize Suzanne Kapinski on Board Bill number 97.
Good morning. I'm going to turn it over to Rob Salarano, who's our properties, the airport's properties manager.
Good morning, Alderman. We respectfully request your approval of a 5-year agreement for the operation and management of airport parking facilities, the Super Park brand, with ABM Parking Services. ABM manages and operates 4 surface parking lots and 2 garages, as well as a passenger shuttle fleet. The term of the agreement begins December 1st, 2014, and ends November 30th, 2019. The airport pays an annual management fee to ABM, and we reimburse ABM for eligible expenses, and then the airport keeps all the revenue from the parking facilities. We respectfully request the T&C committee approval for this bill.
And who currently operates those garages?
It is ABM currently.
And are we having any complaints about them?
No, they've done an excellent job of maintaining our lots and managing the brand.
All right. Alderman Bosley, do you have any questions?
Well, they've been there for a while. This is the second time I've heard it.
Yes, sir.
Well, we don't have any complaints. There's no point in changing horses in the middle of the street.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Alderman Orton.
No question.
Alderman Vaccaro.
No questions.
Alderman Cone.
So what is the Intergovernmental Cooperative Agreement that's referenced here in the briefing papers behind?
That's 98. This is 90.
This says Board Bill 97.
That's all 3 board bills, sorry.
That's a summary of all
The
3.
notes in there.
Okay, I was wondering why it said
I'm gonna
97
do
up at the
that
top.
after,
Oh, it said 97 up at the top, so, okay. All right, no questions.
All right. I would move that we pass Board Bill number 97 out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Board Bill 97 come out of committee with a do pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderman Ordinance.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Tyus. Chairman Conway.
Aye.
5 ayes votes to pass.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Alderman Villa to present Board Bill number 132.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. Tom Vella representing the people of the 11th Ward this morning. I'm here to ask your consideration on Board Bill 132. I had instructed our chief clerk to add the alderman from the 9th and the alderman from the 7th before I introduced it. It obviously didn't resonate with somebody, but the bill we're dealing with this morning actually is improvements. It's a cooperative agreement between Union Pacific Railroad, the Missouri Department of Transportation, who regulates the railroads, and our Board of Public Service to make grade crossing improvements at 8 intersections. All of them are east of Broadway, so they pretty much parallel the Mississippi River, parallel the Mississippi River. The reason that the mayor's office asked me to handle this ordinance is because 4 of the intersections are in my ward. The primary one I'm interested in is the one at Elwood Street, which is going to be the busiest, and we've been meeting for well over 3 years to get improvements between Bell Reeve Park and Sister Marie Charles Park so that the 2 parks are going to come down the side of the hill and merge. This will be a fairly busy intersection, and if you look at the summary that John was kind enough to put together, it gives you some idea. New flashing light signals, the gates will be LEDs. They've vastly improved the monitoring system that sets them off. So as it relates to the fiscal hit, most of it is Union Pacific, MoDOT, and then the city adds the Board of Public Services expertise, and that's the stuff that's kind of on the right-hand side. But we're We're partnering with Union Pacific and the Missouri Department of Revenue. I'm going to turn it, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, just turn it over to John for some other comments.
And the city's component of work will be done by our city street department. It's mainly pavement markings and some advanced warning signs. Relatively small amount of work compared to the cost of the signal upgrades with the UP.
All right, Alderman Bosley, any questions?
Yeah, what will the cost be to the city?
The cost will be the labor involved with grinding out some of the existing markings and reapplying some pavement, striping on the streets like a stop bar in front of the crossing. We'll also have some minor costs associated with purchasing an advanced warning sign and our own labor forces to install those warning signs.
The dollar figure, how much we talking about?
I've not calculated the dollar figure, but fairly relatively small percentage compared to the total project cost.
Yeah, but where will the money come from?
The street department,
Well, you know, money goes into the street department and then is divided among the 28 wards. Are we in the 28 wards paying some of this?
it would come out of the operating budget for the street department to maintain the roadways in the city.
Okay, there's a sales tax that helps pay that. Will it come out of that sales tax first? or
It
what?
would not be monies that would be associated with the half-cent ward capital.
Okay. Well, where would the money come from?
It would be their operating budget.
Well, they're all tight now, and some streets they can't pave, and a whole lot of stuff the street department cannot do because of the money. And what will this impact on what the street department is able to do citywide?
I think Alderman Villa wants to
Yeah,
answer that.
Alderman Bosley, if I could, for instance, if you look at the one that we're going to do, the new signals and improvements on Sydney Street, for instance, painted stop lines on both sides of the crossing would be the city's part of that. So it's just a matter of bringing out a paint striping truck and, restriping that street. We have very little control over the railroads. I don't know if you have many that run through your ward, but this is a kind of a, if it can be a gift from Union Pacific, this is a gift from Union Pacific to improve these crossings. There's very little fiscal impact, I would think, to the city in this particular proposed ordinance. If you read the scope of the work, it just doesn't amount to very much.
Okay. But whatever it is, it'll come out of your money.
No, sir, that's not my understanding. You see, some of these aren't in my ward. I think
okay.
Artman's got
It'll
most of
come
the
out of
trouble
the-
spots. Alderman Artman, he's the one that,
It'll come out of the ward. See, it won't come out of the top amount of money that we divide 28 ways that allows us to do some things in our ward. This money comes off the top before we even do the dividing.
yes, but if you look at the first one, Alderman Bosley, the one on Shoto Avenue, and it's my understanding that is in the alderman from the 7th ward, Alderman Young's ward, removal of existing stop line on the west side of the crossing and reestablish a stop line closer to the track. That's just not very labor intensive, and we restripe streets all the time. As recently as yesterday, we caused chaos, but we restriped the lines going over Interstate 55 at Loughborough. You're familiar with that intersection, there's a lot of traffic there.
Yeah.
But we have new stripings now, but it caused chaos for a couple of hours. So it will not come, there, again, one of these is in the 7th ward, 2 are in Alderman Artman wards, and my ward has 4.
No, I have no other questions, as long as it don't come off the top. And
It's not coming out of the capital improvements.
Well, okay.
What I see here is, repainting the stop bars, however they have to align it to make it safe. And so, the city goes, if you call them, they'll repaint your crosswalks, they'll repaint your stop bars, if you got a problem area. And that comes out of their generic budget. Yeah, there's a little bit of paint and their normal labor there. Alderman Ordman.
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro.
No question.
Alderman Cone.
So I kind of understand where the alderman from the 3rd is coming from, because I've been asking for crosswalks in my ward for a long time, and I'm still waiting on them, even with paying with ward capital. But I am curious about Gasconade Street. I use that probably more so than any other of these intersections here. And there's also, the city's refuse department is right down there off of Gasconade. There's a lot of industrial, so there's a lot of high semi-truck traffic that's down there. And I mean, just as recent as yesterday, there was a backup down there, quite long actually, because of traffic around that rail crossing. And so, I'm kind of looking at like Elwood versus Gasconade, and I'm curious, like, what, it does get a little bit torn up down there, so I'm curious if there's like going to be improvements with, concrete pads. MoDOT was nice enough to kind of cover the cost of the on-ramps and off-ramps, or, well, it's just an on-ramp down there, but, how is it determined, underneath the Union Pacific scope of work, which projects we're going to get these different benefits? And what is a signal bungalow, by the way?
The single bungalow is a housing cabinet that holds the circuitry and the electrical components.
So it's just like a
It's
utility
like
box?
That's right,
Okay,
above ground.
okay. So-
All these improvements are safety related, and between the UP and MoDOT, they determine which improvements would provide the safety upgrades or necessary safety enhancements, and they determine the scopes of work. The only one of the 8 that's getting new crossing surface panels is the Elwood crossing, and that's in conjunction with the connection of the Sister Marie Charles and Belle Reef Parks and the Great Rivers Greenway with that whole project. And that drove the decision for the surface panel upgrades on that particular one.
So, but if memory serves me correctly, that GRG pathway is supposed to be connecting up north along Gasconade as well. And there is a ton of traffic, commercial vehicle traffic that's at that intersection that tears up those streets pretty significantly. So, I guess, what determination, from what you're saying, it sounds as though Gasconade should be getting the same type of treatment that Elwood is getting.
I would like to think, Alderman, it's influenced. The one is in the 11th Ward and the one you're worried about is in the 9th Ward.
That's how you
Alderman Ortman, can you speak? Is anybody troubled by
told you
the
the truth.
Gasconade Street crossing? I can't speak to that.
I think most of the traffic is city refuge because they're down on 2nd right there. So, no, but they, it's safety improvements. It's something that needs to be done, and they need to keep it up. And you talk about the box, the controlling box that's on the vacant lot that always gets overgrown a little bit to the south of where it is. But, there's a lot of traffic that comes through, but most of the traffic is to refuge because they're coming in and out
Well, there's
constantly.
semis up and down there all the time, so.
Well, there are Slay Industries down there. Well, actually, it's not Slay Industries anymore. They sold it, but the warehouse is down there. There's a couple of businesses to the south, and there's more, to the north. But they can also come in Potomac and come down 2nd Street. So they at least there have another way to get through if they look at their maps.
This is a great thing. It's not often that the railroads get to cooperate with the city and state on improvements. It's certainly, I have a UP track that runs along the entire western half of my ward, and that's always a struggle. So,
Well, if you look at
I'm
this,
happy to see that they're actually cooperating.
it's the line that, that UP's got that comes right down the river.
Right,
Yeah, that's the one that they're addressing.
right. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Tyus.
I actually do have a couple of railroads that run through my community. We just got tracks fixed right at Shreve and it used to be Pillsbury, it's now ADM, right off of Shreve and I-70. My question is, I've always, I grew up in a railroad town, Decatur, Illinois, railroads all over. If you grow up in that town, you know how to go around the railroads, you know where to go so that you don't get caught, because it's also a factory town. And so at 318, everybody gets off and the other ship is going there. What is the decision made about where we put the warnings versus where we don't? Because we don't have warnings on Shreve, so how is that decision made? Because it says here, but not limited to the installation of warning devices. So, and I'm thinking that it's going to be the things that go up and down, or is it just the flashing lights?
Well, this is a state program that monitors the grade crossing safety features. So it's, and I don't know the exact process that occurs, determination of what level of road traffic would warrant that type of bigger investment for full flashing lights and gates. I don't have that information.
Is this going to be the full, some of them just have a gate, some of them have, they have varying, nothing?
No, some of them,
Have nothing, exactly.
Yeah, they're-
So I see here where it says, but not limited to the installation of warning devices. So it would be varying depending on the location, is that what you're saying?
That would all be a factor.
Okay, so,
But all of these will get the full upgrade to the flashing lights and gates.
okay. And, so how did that determine that they were all gonna be south and there's not one north?
Well, the city was approached by Missouri Department of Transportation to enter into this agreement for these upgrades. I don't know the history exactly why this route or how MoDOT and UP came to that determination, but this is an initiative that was brought to the city.
Okay. And so who would know that answer?
Missouri Department of Transportation?
Is there someone here? No? So MoDOT just mysteriously, because what it's been my experience in trying, because now I started representing where was then Pillsbury 22, 23 years ago. That's how long it's taken to get those tracks fixed, okay? It's not an easy thing. You have to go through, scream, holler. It works really hard to, right?
Sharon, excuse me, Alderman,
Alderwoman, I got that changed while you were gone. Thank you very much. Our rule got changed.
how would you prefer to be addressed?
Alderwoman.
Alderwoman.
Yes, and but we don't have to do that if we're going to call this the Board of Alderwomen. That's how we got it changed, because the men kept telling me it didn't make any difference. So I said, well, good, let's change the whole name to the Board of Alderwomen. And then they said, okay, Alderwoman, we will let you.
Let's go.
Oh, Conway knows it. We got it changed in rules.
We'd have to change all the stationery.
What I'll do,
Wait a minute, he has something. I want to hear what Tom said.
And I don't know that I was the impetus. I have been working, first of all, if you deal with railroads, they really pretty much have a deaf ear.
And they're powerful.
I mean, you just have to, yes, and they really control so much ground and so much land that's because they've been around a long time and bought up a whole bunch of ground. We have been working with Union Pacific because I had a furor in my ward and the 13th ward because the bulk and shale trains were coming through. So we started to initiate a series of meetings. They were kind enough to send people here over the past 24 months from Kansas City to meet with a group of angry people. So I can't speak to why Union Pacific made this particular decision. But it just takes a long time for the railroads just to do anything because they control so much. And we really, as a city, don't have much control over them at all. It's and again, that's why MoDOT is in this loop in the first place. In Missouri, the railroads are controlled by are overseen by the Missouri Department of Transportation. But I can't speak to why this particular route was chosen. I am, again, maybe being redundant, but the one at Elwood, we have been working with GRG, and we're going to have a handicapped accessible bike and walking trail that's going to connect two parks, and that's I guess that's the emphasis that I would place on these particular crossings. The other three in my ward, quite frankly, are just used by industrial vehicles, and no one lives east of those tracks unless there's no houses there. There's light industry.
Right.
What I will do, Alderwoman Tyus, is contact our representative for MoDOT that initiated this and ask them what progress, where we stand with the other railroad company that runs through your area, which is different than the Union Pacific, and try to get an update of where they stand with potential upgrades.
Well, like I said, we were very happy because we got the street. So I thought, now you're making me feel like we didn't do enough, okay? But it's taken 21 years to get the tracks fixed, okay?
And Alderwoman, I will tell you, I would be happy to share my contact in Kansas City with Union Pacific, who happen to like my nephew Matt.
Okay.
Not me.
Oh,
And
I'm sure.
The lines of communication were great.
Okay.
And you know, I found them pretty easy to work with because of the furor over the tank cars.
Okay.
And the
Yeah, I've been
Chief
reading about that.
Jenkerson
Right.
went to a couple of public meetings and you know, virtually threw some gasoline on a fire, and then explained to them the volatility of the bulk and shale and whatever else. And quite honestly, they now the dangerous trains go through Alton, Illinois, and not our neighborhood. So that was a major victory for those guys and gals that live in the areas affected.
It might well be that you have more dangerous material going through. Ours is right near a residence, and so I just have never understood why they didn't have something, because in Illinois, they're pretty hard on you about putting up warning things, and so residents live right up almost to the gate, okay? I mean, where there should be a gate. So I just never have understood, so I was trying to understand the process, because you said the MoDOT came and basically put it in your lap. I've not found that to be the way it's.
Well, I'll follow up.
Okay. It's been the opposite for me too, okay? So, then the other thing, I'm reading here on page 1 of 3, line 10, 11, that, in 12, that we have some sort of master agreement for additional warnings between the Railroad Commission, and I guess it's also the City of St. Louis. Do we have a copy of this, from 1980? Were you here in 1980, the first time?
Freeman was here in 1980.
No, were you? Freeman, were you here in 1980, the first time? When did you first come down here?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was here in the 70s.
Okay.
I shouldn't tell people that.
Yes, you
'cause they'll
should.
think I'm old.
You're not old.
Okay.
You go.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I don't
but
even
do we
gonna
have a-
tell that woman
I'm
that.
sure that we have a copy. I don't have that copy with me.
Whenever people say pursuant to something, and then they don't attach it, that always makes me want a copy of it then, okay? So now I want a copy of it, because I can't vote on pursuant to something, and then I don't know what it says. It could say, kill everybody in this room, okay? I don't like that to be pursuant, and then not provide me a copy, so,
We did get a copy and had our city legal department look at that original copy.
okay?
And I can get you that if you'd like that.
Thank you. And then, and maybe you could just, the manual on uniform traffic control devices, so there's an actual manual, or it is what is that? Is that a guiding device or what?
It's a manual that identifies all the standard pavement markings and signage that's used throughout the United States, but it provides the governing design of those facilities so that they're uniform and drivers and people can recognize that
Okay.
uniform.
And is that,
traffic
if I wanted to see
device.
something like that, would that be online?
I believe it is, but the hard copy is about 6 inches thick.
That's why I figured, that's why I said, if I wanted to just look at
Yeah, I
it,
think you can
would
look
it be
up
online? Okay, all right. But I want to say to my friend from the 11th, good work, I tell you, when you can get the railroads to work with you like that, you're masterful. I guess that's,
I didn't mean to, no, we,
good work.
it's been a long time coming. There's nothing simple about dealing with
I know.
railroads.
I know.
I can call them, Alderwoman, and say I have high weeds at Wilmington are horrendous, and they're still there. So don't misunderstand.
We have a group of
I don't have
trimmers
a-
now, so we send our trimmers out. We actually have about 10
I certainly
men.
don't have a magic wand, and the railroads are quite honestly so big and so heavily regulated at the federal level.
Right.
When an alderman calls, you've been reduced to a tinkling crossing signal whether you like it or not.
And-
Okay.
right. Okay, but I just still think that's good work, and I'm impressed.
I would move that we pass Board Bill number 132 out of
Second.
committee with a do-pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderman Ordman.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye.
6 aye votes, we pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Board Bill
Can you
number
also check with
98.
GRG about that Gascony
Okay.
bike path, please?
Sure. Call me, I'll
I
tell
will.
you more about it.
Thank you.
Good work.
We have Susan Kapinski, the Deputy Director, presenting Board Bill number 98.
Good morning again. In 2011, the BiState Development Agency and the St. Louis State Control Police Department entered into an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement for regional interoperable public safety communications. The airport is a part of this agreement, linking our communication system with the police department, the city's police department, as well as BiState. Because the at that time, state-controlled police department is now a city-controlled police department. Amendment has to be made to this agreement recognizing that fact. So really, all this, this amendment does is change the language to the city-controlled police department versus the state-controlled police department. Respectfully, I request your approval for this draft ordinance.
Alderman Bosley.
Yeah, does the city police department control the policing activities at the airport now, or is it
Not
just
yet.
like it was?
Not yet, until some things have to happen legislatively with the state. That has not occurred yet, so they are not.
The question is then, we're real short of police officers and money now. How is that gonna be paid for? We have police officers from the city now policing the airport.
Well,
Where's that money
the
gonna come?
airport does have its own police department.
Well, I know they
And there's
do.
about 100, the budget is for 100 staff.
But they're
okay?
not under the St. Louis Police Department, are
Not
they?
yet, but when they are, it will be the same. They will still have those police officers there.
And the money that pays those police
Will
officers
come
out
from the
there.
airport. The
Well, wait a
airport
minute.
will pay for those police officers.
But yet they'll be controlled by the
Correct.
St. Louis Police Department.
That's correct, but the airport will pay for it. Just like the fire department,
Why don't they just send the money to the St. Louis Police Department? Because whoever pays the bill is the guy that controls whatever.
this is the way that it happens. The analogy is the fire department. The firefighters at the airport are
Okay.
under the control of the city fire department, but the airport pays for them. We have to keep them separate as far as the payment of those employees because of federal regulations. And there's the general fund and there's the enterprise fund, which is the airport. So it'll work the same way when it happens as the current fire department works.
And will the chief of police have input to what the police are doing out there at the airport?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Alderman Ordman.
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro.
I think the chief of police already has taken over out there.
No, he is not. I'm sorry.
Then who's in charge?
Right now, they still report to the airport director. She works with the chief of police,
Right, but
Chief Dotson, but, and they have a person from the city police department that's out there learning the operation, but the airport police is not legally and technically under the city police department yet.
So they don't have a chief or anything out there then?
We do not have a chief of police, but that's why we have a major, we have a captain, and also there's a colonel from Chief Dotson's office that's out there overseeing it,
So the
But-
city police are overseeing it then?
but not legally.
So they're illegally doing it?
No, they're learning,
They're not part of the chain of command.
thank you, that's a better way of saying it, I appreciate that.
Nothing else?
Alderman Cone.
Which colonel is,
Atkins?
okay.
Alderwoman Tyus.
So, can you just tell me a little bit about this public safety communication system? This is not like, is this for like if there's an emergency, what is
Correct.
it? Right.
For the region, you want to make sure
Right.
that there's good response time, doesn't matter where the emergency happens. It also is the communication of all these for first responders as well.
Okay. And so the system is already linked together.
Correct,
It's just
yeah.
changing the name of,
That's it.
making it legal. Okay. That's something we don't believe in this city a lot of times. We just do things kind of the way we want to. And what is the BSDA? What does that stand for?
BSDA,
Where is it in the interest of, but let's see, it's page 3 of 5, maybe it's something that I missed.
BiState Development Agency.
Oh,
Right there.
okay. I'm not good with the,
BiState?
okay. And can you tell me, since I wasn't here for, maybe I was and I wasn't part of the transportation, what does the agreement call for? So you're saying it's just changing the names, but could you tell me a little bit about the agreement?
It's my understanding that what it does is that it connects or links the communication system so that they all talk to each other. And it basically tells them, you have the authority to talk to each other, to help each other in case of an emergency.
And is there a financial component? If so, how is that divided?
Not that I'm aware of. And I would be aware of that. Being the CFO.
I know. That's why I'm asking you
Right.
that, okay. All right, I have no further questions.
I would move that we pass Board Bill number 98 with due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill number 98 with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Seeing no objection, Board Bill 98 passes with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 115. Rob?
We respectfully request the committee's approval of a banking concession for U.S. Bank at Lambert St. Louis International Airport. U.S. Bank operates a public bank branch, in Terminal 1 on the lower level, and also has in their premises 5 ATM locations. U.S. Bank, as part of this banking concession, is the only bank with ATMs post-security. The agreement is 5 years, commencing on December 1st, 2014, expires November 30th, 2019. Revenue to the airport is the Terminal 1 rental rate plus 55% of all foreign ATM transactions. We respectfully request the committee's approval of this banking concession at Lambert.
I kind of missed on the revenue. What is our revenue stream from them?
Revenue to the airport is the Terminal 1 rental rate, which is currently $65.64 per square foot, and they also pay us 55% of the foreign revenue, the foreign ATM fees. In other words, if you're a non-U.S. Bank customer and you walk up and you pay them a fee of, I believe it's $3 right now, we get 55% of that amount for foreign transactions.
Alderman Basil.
Well, the question is whether or not their operation out there is paid for by taxpayers' money, or do they cover it all?
No, they cover it all. They're responsible for everything they do out there, and they pay us rent plus the foreign transaction fee.
Okay, I have no question. Don't cost us nothing.
Alderman Ordman.
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro.
How many bidders does this go out to?
There were 28 letters sent out in the process.
And how many responses?
One bid response.
And it was U.S. Bank?
It was U.S. Bank, correct.
Okay,
The
no questions.
incumbent.
No, nothing else.
Alderman Cone.
No questions.
Alderwoman Tyus.
So U.S. is the only bank that we have out there, so it's a sole, nobody else can, is it a covenant not to compete, or do we let other people also do?
They're the only ones at the bank branch. It's a non-exclusive agreement, so if we decided to put in another bank branch, we could bid that out as well. And also other banks under a separate ATM concession agreement. There's a number of other banks that have ATMs pre-security out there for their customers.
So then this bid, there was something that was pretty large, and so people had to be able to step up to a certain amount of square footage versus maybe if I was a smaller bank and I just wanted to do maybe 5 or 6 ATMs. So this was something they had to, in the request for
The
proposal.
yeah,
Right,
their little front, if you will.
right.
There's 1,000 square feet.
And then you said that there's a 3% foreign transaction.
$3.
No, 55% of the 55%,
For the foreign ATM fee?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I thought I heard 3%. Was that, what did I?
No, I said $3 is what I said, is
Okay.
I believe is the current foreign transaction fee. So we would collect 55% of that foreign transaction fee.
Okay.
And $3 is an estimate.
And it's $65.64 a square foot for rental?
1,083 square.
Okay.
Yes.
And this runs from when in November?
December 1st, 2014 to November 30th, 2019.
So it's a 5 years? Okay.
Yes.
Is it automatic renewable? Do you have to put a bid back out or what?
No, this is something where
Request back
we would either have to amend this agreement or we would go back out for bid.
Okay. No further questions.
All right. Madam Clerk, I would move that we pass Board Bill number 115 out of committee with a due pass rec.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been moved in second that we pass Board Bill number 115 out of committee with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Seeing no objection, Board Bill number 115 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Yes, and Suzanne, would you introduce the...
Mario?
Don't go anywhere, committee members.
Mario? Would like to welcome
Would you introduce
Sure.
Mario to the committee?
Yes. I'd like to introduce Mario Pandolfo, is the airport's attorney through the city councilor's office, the city's city councilor's office. We were requested to ask Mario to come here to answer questions from back in, was it June, I believe?
Right, I had asked that they bring Mario in just to go over, the statutory operative language that people had raised concerns about with respect to authorizing and directing the comptroller and its standard statutory language. And he'll explain that provision and the necessity for that in most of the agreements that we see. And that was at your request, not mine. So,
It was mine particularly. I don't like that directive of elected officials, especially when you authorize non-elected officials.
Well, having said that, what I can tell you is that authorizing and directing is standard language and ordinances. The idea of directing elected officials or appointed officials is actually, pretty standard. In fact, without the legislative body authorizing and directing, elected officials would be very limited in what they could do. They could only do what is permissible under the charter. So one type of ordinance that is generally passed by legislative bodies like yourself, or the Board of Aldermen, is administrative ordinances. Those are ordinances that typically authorize and direct officers, elected officials, to enter into and execute contracts, agreements, leases, whatever. Of course, the process to get there is, there's as you know, the comptroller's office, procurement processes under the city's ordinances. We have a process on any agreement that's over 3 years. It requires Board of Aldermen approval. That means it has to be approved by the director, has to be approved by the Airport Commission, which on that commission, as you know, is the comptroller, president of the Board of Aldermen, the head of the T&C committee, plus 5-6 appointees of the mayor. Once it gets past that, it also has to be approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. And then, of course, the Board of Aldermen. The only other thing I can say is that it is a pretty common practice. It's, for example, I know from my own history on bond deals with the comptroller's office, for example, not just airport, but city bond deals, authorizing, directing the standard typical language that is in all our bonding and indentures. If you look at SLDC, you'll see that same kind of language when you're dealing with any kind of agreement or application or grants. You'll see that typical standard language authorizing and directing. So I don't know, hopefully that kind of answers it. There's no real magic answer to it other than that.
Alderman?
So anyway, so I understand there is a difference between authorize and direct. In this particular case, and we're doing it later because otherwise we would have it before us, in each piece of legislation that we had where people were directors, we authorized them. I have no problem with authorizing people, especially elected officials, to do their job. Where I come in and have a problem is said when you direct them, and then the elected official comes in, and I've been here long enough, so when the comptroller and the mayor really didn't get along, okay? And so the comptroller would say no on many occasions to things. So if we authorize them, then they have the right to do what they're supposed to do. What if we direct them to do something that they then says is in direct opposition to what they're supposed to do? So I know, wait, let me just finish, you finish. There are a lot of things that's been going on for long times, and ever since I've been here, I push against all those things, okay? Because what's been going on forever doesn't make it good sense to keep doing it, okay? Like, I never thought being called an alderman was a good sense, and I never even ran for that. I didn't know till I came down here, okay? And I was like, what? You call but congresswomen are called congresswomen. So I am just, why I raised the question is because it pointedly was not in the legislation that was not directed toward elected officials. Even this year, since I've been back, and I was gone for 10 years and I came back, since I've been back, we've had some really pointed conversations about some things that tried to get changed with our water, and it all got into language, okay? So if you direct the comptroller to do something and we passed it as a legislative body and we authorize them, that ought to be enough in most cases. We don't have to direct them to do something for them to do their job. It's what my feelings were, and my being uncomfortable because of what I just had been involved in with the Viola water situation, and because words do mean something. That's how come you're a lawyer and why I'm a lawyer, because words do mean something, and that was my concern.
Right.
Go ahead.
And I understand what you're saying too. The idea of the authorizing, directing, you're correct, is that it's not a blanket direction. I mean, for example, in order, any municipal competence or ordinance requirements, it's always subject to that. For example, if this board would authorize and direct the comptroller to execute a deed, she could not do so because it violates the charter.
Exactly.
And so when you say authorize and direct, it's not suggesting for a minute that the comptroller is prohibited or has no choice but to sign that, because no, if there was a charter issue, if there was a rule of law issue, it's always subject to that. If there wasn't proper budgeting or accounting, or there wasn't dollars in the budget, for example, it would be totally within her discretion and under her powers not to sign or agree to that agreement. But having said that, the authorizing to direct is you're right. I'm not going to try to pretend as a lawyer that authorizing and directing isn't different than just authorizing. If you just authorize someone, what you're saying is, we don't care whether you enter into it or not.
I don't think you're saying you don't care. You're just giving them the authority that they may not have had. I get an authority if I represent somebody.
You're
Okay.
passing it on. Right.
Okay.
So, I can't argue with that. Right.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is if you look at the language, and that what you typically see, and there's a reason for that, is that you do want to authorize and direct.
Exactly. That was my point.
And
Okay.
if you don't, then you shouldn't.
And that was my question, and it was so pointed because in each of the other, and we don't have it here, so I wish you were here so I could point it out to you and show you the things in which there was not an elected official. It just said authorized, and I don't think that we meant we don't care if you don't do it.
But
we're
it
just
does
giving
give you
right.
discretion.
So I don't like it. I've talked to the comptroller about it. If I was the comptroller, I would take it out, but I'm also the person that goes to my doctor, and when they get you to sign something, I go through and scratch off all the things about you allowing them to use students and things like that. So, because I have been taught at Washington University that words mean everything, and then when you get into an argument, and this was brought home this year in language in which somebody said because the Board of Aldermen had passed something about something, that it was already an accomplished feat, and the comptroller and the president of board said no, and the mayor said something else, okay? And then we had to get into it. So for me, as a lawyer, I always think that it's better to look at how we use our words, and, you know, did we have to put direct in there? Will that become a problem at some time down the road, okay? So, and so you've already said what I said. Those are not the same. Authorizing and directing is not the same thing, okay? And so if you mean to do it, that's fine, but if you don't, that's a dangerous thing to do to me, and then get into
Either
a
way.
thing. Right.
Yeah, you can go either
Right.
way.
And the point being, and Maria didn't address, but if I'm a bondholder, if I'm lending you money, or I am doing something, entering into agreement with the city, I want assurance that A, you're gonna pay the bills, B, you're gonna follow your obligation, or I'm not gonna enter into an agreement. I'm not gonna lend you $100 million if it was under an authorized provision.
Right,
And that is the essence of that type of language. Alderwoman, I'm speaking.
Excuse me.
Alderwoman, I'm still speaking.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
So that's why you would have that type of provision, is to authorize and direct, is to give assurance to people who do business with us, or where we have to meet an obligation and they meet a long-term obligation. On many things, you don't need necessarily an authorize and direct, but for people dealing with third parties, you would generally have to have that, or people wouldn't deal with you.
Right. And that's true, like in agreements, in leases, and concessions, and development agreements. You'll see that also in indentures, and you'll see it in bond deals or grant agreements. Most things that we put before this board, because we're obviously not passing ordinances to regulate somebody. That's your preview, not ours. But typically, what we're presenting to you are authorizations to enter into agreements, concessions, leases, different kind. So, sometimes long-term service agreements, and agreements over 3 years. And you're right, when you go through a bid process and award and doing business, you want to know that the deal is going to go through.
All right.
I'm still, because since he's here. So are you taking the position then that we can direct the comptroller to do something, we, the Board of Aldermen, is that what your position is?
Yes.
And force them to, and force her, or him, whoever it may be,
Right.
to do something?
I'm saying the legislative bodies typically do this all the time. They set guidelines.
That's not my
and
question. My question
requirements.
is,
Yes, the
so-
question is answered yes.
So we can direct the comptroller, and the comptroller has to do it because the Board of Aldermen told her to.
Directive, subject to, provided that it's a municipal component and that it's not a violation of any charter or rules. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then what would happen under your interpretation? Say we direct the comptroller to do something, or the mayor, or whoever, and they take the position, no, I'm not going to do it, and this is the reason why, and it doesn't meet the
Well,
charter.
then you could possibly, if the rationale for not doing it is because of some violation of law, rule, budget, procedure, then end of story, period.
Okay.
If it's just no reason at all, then you have a different issue.
Then the issue would be to go and to court and force them to do
Well,
their duty.
Yeah, I guess
Right.
potentially that would be the end result. I've never seen that happen in 30 years, but, you know.
Which is why, I just think that that's redundant most of the time. It assumes that the elected official would not do their duty. And so, yeah, I just think that that's redundant, okay? And like I said, from what I saw this year coming back here and seeing the mayor argue that we had passed something from the Board of Aldermen, which clearly, when we got the tape and the chairman and the president, and you're not in, you maybe weren't part of this, the president of the board and the comptroller all said, oh, no, we did not. Alderman Kennedy from Ways and Means. So I came in on the middle of that. And so that is why, I guess before, I've never even questioned it. I've sat down here for 12 years before that and didn't question it. But when I saw that happen, it raised a flag for me to maybe look at our, what you call standard wording. And many, many times before, I've seen wording in the middle of legislation that, because we've used it so much, people haven't gone over it, and it's really been sloppy lawyering and has no business in that. So that's why I raised the question. I'm going to continue to raise the question because you and I both just said authorize and direct doesn't mean the same thing. So I don't know that it always has to be in there, and that's my concern.
All right, are there any other questions? Mario, thank you for coming in. And we'll call on you if we need you again.
You got it, sir. Thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Okay.